There we go. Tell you what, hello everyone. Welcome to the first of the webinars that I'm running through Phase on Triathlon, my business. This week we are looking at swim breathing. Okay, so we're going to be primarily focused on the freestyle stroke, but we are going to have a little look at the breaststroke and a few other bits as well. The idea being that we're hopefully going to get people a lot more confident with their breathing in the water, because breathing really is the foundation of the stroke. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as we go along, and I get through to answering them. I do have a 5-year-old greyhound who is sleeping quietly behind me. If you do see a black shape appear behind me, it's not a demon. She just wants to say hello. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you, and then we can get going. Yeah, again, technical difficulties. How is it I do this? It is summary chat, not there. Oh, here we go. Nope. Notes, whiteboards, apps, reactions. Here it is. The green one. Right. Okay, so can you all see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah.
Give us a wave. Yeah. Okay, great. So this is Swim Breathing Masterclass by myself, Simon Olney, done through my business Phase on Triathlon. And it's now not letting me move between slides, which is fantastic. Excellent. That's just what we like to get started. Okay, let me come out of the presentation mode. Oh no, there we go. Right. So just a little bit about me before we get started. I've listed a few of my qualifications there if you're interested. Been coaching for 8 years. I'm swimming 750 meters in 13 minutes. So, just to give you an idea of, the kind of swim background that I have, that I do, I have been doing it for a bit. I'm all right. Started swimming at 22, seriously. I could splash around in the pool previously, but I really started to learn at 22. So I'm not one of these people who's been swimming since they were 3. I'm based in the Cotswolds, well, just technically just south of the Cotswolds. And, I finished an Ironman for people who are interested in that. But what we're going to be covering in today's webinar, so we're going to be looking at inhalation and exhalation, a head position, body rotation, the mechanics of freestyle breathing, and we're going to be looking at bilateral versus unilateral breathing, bit of breaststroke breathing, some question and answer at the end. So let's get started. So the importance of, good swim breathing, why is it so important? We're going to start off with some, more basic bits, and then as we go through, we're going to get some of the more complex stuff. So if it does feel like I'm teaching you to suck eggs to start with, hopefully we get something a bit more valuable towards the end. But simply put, it's important for the regulation of oxygen and carbon dioxide. I'm not going to sit here and mansplain these things to you, but it is, obviously we want oxygen, we don't want carbon dioxide. It allows us, like good breathing allows us to maintain a certain level of exertion. So it allows a good breath will allow us to sustain a high swim speed much better than poor breathing will. Poor breathing, we will tire a lot more quickly. So if we want to be able to hold a good pace, our breathing has to be on point. Gives us a nice bit of rhythm to our stroke as well. If you are holding your breath and only breathing every 7 strokes because you're trying to minimize the amount you're breathing, that's really going to throw you off. If you're breathing every 2, breathing every 3, just helps things flow a little bit better. And it also gives us an ability to adapt to different situations, especially in open water. If we were one-trick pony and we can only breathe a very certain way, okay, it's very easy to find ourselves caught out when we're swimming. Now, we are focused on freestyle here, sort of front crawl, for those of us that are from Britain, chances are. But we are going to be looking, breaststroke is always something you can fall back on. We'll be looking at that a little bit later. So, does your freestyle stroke look a little bit like this? So it's quite a choppy stroke. You can see that there's quite a lot of effort that's being used to breathe there. It's not really very fluid, okay? And I was actually quite tired at the end of filming that. Well, we're going to hopefully work with you to help your stroke look a bit more like this. Okay, it's smoother. The arms aren't flailing around as much. And I honestly felt much better at the end of that one than I did at that first one. They don't look incredibly different to the eye, but it will just help with your energy management over time. And the difference between those two strokes is the breathing, really. So it's really important when we're swimming that we exhale in the water, okay? The last thing I want a swimmer to do is be holding their breath under the water. If you are running along and someone is running alongside you who's holding their breath and then doing this big exhale and big inhale, you sort of look at them and go, "Are you all right, mate?" You know, it would be a really bizarre thing to do. You'd expect them to breathe more often to help them get more oxygen because we need oxygen for our muscles to be able to fire, for our muscle fibers to contract. It's what gives us movement. Um, so we should, whenever our face is in the water, we should always be breathing out or breathing in. Okay, whenever we're swimming, breathing out or breathing in. Don't ever really hold your breath. There are two ways to exhale. So you've got trickle breathing versus trickle exhalation versus explosive. Trickle exhalation is where you have a small, consistent stream of bubbles that can come out of your mouth or your nose, or both. It's up to you. Some people much prefer their nose, some people prefer their mouth. I do both, but again, there's no real right or wrong. Play around with it, see what works for you. So trickle is a steady stream, whereas the explosive exhalation is where you hold your breath a bit more and then you exhale all the carbon dioxide out of your lungs just before you turn to take a breath. Okay. I've tried it. I don't get on with it at all, but some people really much prefer that. So again, play around with both, but I recommend you start with that trickle exhalation and see how you get on. Now, if you're really struggling with the idea of exhalation in the pool, if it really sort of gets you a bit tense, okay? You can practice this either in the bath or in maybe the bathroom sink, fill it up with water, put your face in and just have a go at blowing bubbles out in the bath or in the sink, okay? You just get used to that idea. It's quite alien, especially if we're a little bit anxious about putting our face in the water. Having that the ability to exhale confidently is really important for our swim stroke. So we do need to work on that. Hopefully over, a few sessions, you should see some notable improvements. We're going to talk about sink downs. That's one of my favorite breathing exercises to give someone, okay? It's where you lie on your front floating in the pool and you exhale out of your mouth or your nose, up to you. The idea being that our lungs are what make us float on top of the water. As we start to empty the lungs of the oxygen, okay, we start to sink. And the idea is that after you practice this a bit, you can actually keep exhaling, exhaling, exhaling until you're sitting on the bottom of the pool. Or if you're like me, you can show off, roll onto your back, look up at the ceiling, okay? But I'm quite sinky, so it's easy for me. But by getting used to the idea of I'm really emptying a lot of air from my lungs and I'm okay, is a really hard concept to get your head around. The human body has enough oxygen in it generally for about 2 to 3 minutes, but it doesn't necessarily feel like that if you have your face in the water for 5 seconds, get a bit panicked, okay? But these exercises can help teach you, know what, actually, it's okay, we're fine. By exhaling in the water, it prevents every breath that you take feeling like it might be your last. Okay. I think we've all had it, especially when we started out. We take a breath, we have to exhale and then inhale while our face is at the water and put our face in. And it really feels like we're gasping for air. Okay. We might be swallowing water. Feels like a fight for survival rather than it does simply a nice way to a nice way to sort of to train and to keep fit. Okay. So the exhalation element of it is super important. I cannot emphasize it enough. Again, if you're exhaling, it prevents the buildup of CO2 in your lungs because you're getting rid of that CO2. And we want to try and keep the inhalation brief. We don't want to snatch the breath. We don't want it to be as fast as possible, but neither do we want it to be a laborious turn, exhale, inhale, put your face back in, because that's just going to slow us down. So next up, we're going to look at head position. So again, this is really individual, but I wanted to throw some rough guidelines around things to think about. Often when we're taught to swim, we're taught to look straight down at the bottom of the pool. Okay. And even if you go to a swim coach, a triathlon coach, they say, oh, your legs are sinking, which for a lot of new swimmers, they will be. And they go, the way you get around your legs sinking is you look down and your legs have come up. It's a bit like a seesaw. It's true, it does work like that. The downside of this is if you're looking straight bolt down at the bottom of the pool, you've then got to lift your head. Well, 90 degrees is the water, and you've got to then lift it above. So you're probably lifting your head closer to 40, maybe 50 degrees of movement every time you want to take a breath. Okay. But it's a fair bit of strain on your neck, especially if you're doing it several times. If you have your gaze slightly higher, you don't have to move your head nearly as far to breathe. Okay. Now, if you look too high, your legs are going to sink. Okay. So you do want to find that sweet spot. I look ever so slightly, probably just 10 degrees slightly forward in the water when I'm swimming along. Just to make that breath a little bit easier, to make it a little bit more controlled. Additionally, it makes sighting easier when I go to lift my head out of the water to see where I'm going. Makes it a lot easier. And you can also better spot swimmers in front of you. Now, it's not so much an issue in the pool, but if you're in open water and people are wearing black wetsuits, it can be quite hard to spot a swimmer in front of you in the water. If you have your gaze ever so slightly in front, you might just see their feet before you swim into the back of them. Now, you don't want to swim into the back of a swimmer. They certainly don't want you to swim into the back of them. So bringing that head position up just a little bit, it can be a bit counterintuitive, especially if you spent all of your life being told to look straight down. But you know what? Play around with it in your next swim and let me know how it goes. Next up, we're looking at body rotation, okay? So body rotation really is the key for setting you up for a great breath. Now, as we're swimming along, instead of being completely flat on the water as we swim, we want to rotate as we lift our arms forward. So if you imagine I'm swimming towards you, as I reach out to the right, I slightly lift my body that side and then the other side. So rather than just swimming like this, we're reaching forwards and we're letting our body follow it. Okay. Now, our torso and our trunk should rotate, but our head should stay quite still. We don't want our head to be bobbing around as we swim. But when it comes to the breaststroke, when you come to lift your head to take a breath, we want you to help follow that torso around and lift your head to take a breath. Now, suddenly, not only do we not need to leave, if we're looking a little bit forwards, not only do you not need to lift it nearly as far, our torso is following it, and we just have to lift the head probably only sort of 20 degrees, 15, 20 degrees to get to the water, and then we're back down, okay? Makes a huge difference. Now, you can see this image on the top, on the right-hand side. That is an image of me sort of swimming with what I would call some sort of standard level rotation, okay? So I'm not saying it's perfect, but that is what I consider to be approximately the right level of rotation that you want. You don't want to be super flat on the water. Equally, what you don't want is you don't want to look like the swimmer below. Now, I'm not picking on her. It's something that a lot of people do, but they really over-rotate in the water. So instead of doing that sort of 45 degrees to either side, they go all the way to 90. Okay, sometimes even further. They will actually bring their shoulders round behind their center of gravity. Okay, and they lift their head way too far out the water to take a breath. She's almost looking at the sky there. So to get around that and to help sort of prevent that, we do what we call sort of rotation drills. Okay, so the likes of kick on the side, 6-1-6, these drills that you may have come across, where you spend time swimming on your side with fins as opposed to swimming straight, just to get you more used to spending time on each side and rotating through the stroke. It's also more hydrodynamic if we're rotating. So like a Formula One car is aerodynamic. As swimmers, we want to be hydrodynamic, which means that we want to slip through the water easier. And as we twist our way through the water, we encounter less resistance in the water. Also gives us a longer stroke as we're reaching forwards. If I'm twisting my body, I'm getting another kind of, I don't know, let's call it 10 centimeters stroke length. It's not an awful lot. But if you times that over, say, 100 strokes, suddenly that's starting to add up. Okay, so it gives you a slightly longer stroke, which helps you move more water. And we generally want to avoid, finally, the point that being over, avoid over rotating, overcompensating. Now, it's difficult to know whether you are rotating enough or whether you're over rotating. The best way really is to get somebody who, ideally somebody who knows what they're looking at, to have a look at you and give you some feedback. So let's talk about the mechanics of freestyle breathing. So how is it that we should breathe? Well, we want to lift our head as little as possible to take a breath, okay? We don't want it to be looking up towards the sky. We want our mouth just to clear the water. In fact, a lot of swimmers, I mean, I'm talking pool swimmers here, really top level pool swimmers, they'll have one goggle in the water and only half of their mouth is what they'll be breathing out of because they're trying to minimize that head lift as little as possible. So again, this is a skill that is developed over years, but try to avoid over rotating, try to avoid over lifting your head, play around with what it is that you can get away with. Can I lift my head a little low and still be able to get that breath in? As you're swimming along, we want to try to swim into what we call the bow wave. Now, I'm going to show you a video here of me swimming, and you can see that around my head, just like a ship, as it would be cutting through the water. The water is just that there's sort of a gap in the water that's slightly lower than the surface level, okay, that I'm breathing into. There's a wave that goes around and I'm breathing into that, okay, which doesn't take nearly as much effort as having to lift my head all the way out of the water above the waterline. Going to show you that again. Nope. So lifting my head as little as possible and breathing into that bow wave. When you're watching this video, I realized before I breathe left, I actually lift my head slightly. There we go. Something to work on. So we want to keep the breath short, okay? But we don't want to rush it. Equally, we don't want to be snatching a breath. That's going to cause our anxiety levels to increase, our stress levels to increase. But what if you don't create a bow wave when you're swimming? I mean, this was certainly the case for me when I first started swimming. You actually need to be moving at a certain pace to create a bow wave. If you are moving very slowly through the water, you're not going to create that bow wave to breathe into, which is going to make your breathing harder. And we've got a bit of a chicken and egg situation here, okay? So what we're going to do is rather than say, okay, right, just try harder, okay? It's not very helpful information, is it? We're going to try and I'm going to try and talk you through ways that we can help give you a little bit more speed and lift your legs up, okay? Now, if somebody's legs are sinking, I know this is a webinar about breathing, but we are going to be looking into into sort of leg position, that because everything swimming is interlinked, okay? If somebody's legs are sinking, if you think about a child with a kite, okay? If they're saying, my kite won't take off, you go, well, you need to run faster with it and it will slowly lift itself up with that. It's the same with kicking with our legs when we're swimming, okay? But let's be honest, just swim faster isn't really especially helpful advice. So let's look at ways in which we can improve our speed and hopefully you can see some nice results. So we're going to talk about the catch, okay? We're going from breathing through to the catch because I believe the two are interconnected. The catch is how we grab a handful of water. Now, when we're swimming, okay, we don't just want to be windmilling our arms aimlessly. Okay, we don't want to be entering the water with our wrist dipped and just kind of going along like this. Okay, I've seen plenty of people do that. We want our arms to be coming into the water, grabbing a handful of water and pushing that water behind us. Okay, let's have a look at the video and have a actually now go through this first so we can look through the coaching points. So the main thing the catch is what happens between our arm entry and when we pull. So it's quite a short phase, but it's important. We need to keep our elbow above our wrist, okay? We need to keep our wrist above our fingertips. And that's at all points in the stroke. At no point in the stroke should I be doing this or this, okay? We want to maintain that pattern at all times, okay? So as our arm comes in, we want to start creating this L shape. And we're using our forearm here to really push the water behind us. Okay, that's what moves us through the water. We grab a handful of water and we push it back. Okay, it can help if you imagine reaching forwards and pushing something towards you. That is how freestyle swimming works. A lot of children, when they learn to swim front crawl or freestyle, they'll put their face in the they start off with kicking. Okay, so they will kick their legs really hard, and that's what gives them propulsion. Because A, they don't have much upper body strength, and B, it's quite a technical. Using the upper body, it's quite a technical way to move your way through the water. So people just kick really hard, and the arms spin around. Okay, if you're learning to swim your first length of the pool, it works. But what we really need to as adult swimmers is kick less and use our arms more. So think about really moving forward and pushing that water behind us with our arms as the primary method of moving ourselves through the water. Okay. If we have a good catch, if we are in this position here, okay, we're not just relying on our shoulders. If our arm is straight, we are using pretty much just our shoulders. If we have a nice bend in the elbow here, we're suddenly recruiting our triceps and our lats in our back here. These are big muscle groups, okay, which can generate a lot more force and they tire a lot slower than the shoulder. Additionally, if you put less strain on the shoulder, less chance of shoulder injuries. Let me just wet my whistle a little bit. So a good visualization for this for people is imagine you've got an eyeball on your elbow, okay, and you want to show it the side of the pool. So as you swim along, you're trying to keep your elbow there nice and high, show it the side of the pool. Don't let it drop. It wants to look at the side of the pool. It's a bit of an odd one. Let's see if it works for you. Now, I'm going to show you this video of me swimming with what I believe is a relatively good catch, okay? Look at the shape of the arm and how I move through the water. So by moving ourselves, by pushing more water behind us, that gives us more speed, which will lift our legs up. As we lift our legs up and we have more speed, we'll create a bow wave as we're swimming, which will make the breathing easier. Okay, this is one of the reasons it's so hard to teach someone to swim because everything is so interlinked to each other. Okay, but if you haven't got much experience with the catch, go away, try that, see how you get on. So another hot topic is bilateral versus unilateral breathing. Okay, so do we need to breathe to both sides, or is it okay if we just breathe to one side? Well, generally speaking, if we're breathing unilaterally just to one side, it means we have a less balanced stroke. I'm going to show you a slightly exaggerated clip here of what your typical unilateral breather does. So someone who only breathes to one side. So that arm on the right there is really whacking the water hard. The left one is just kind of pulling through, not really doing much. You've got quite an imbalance in the stroke there. Again, it was hammed up a little bit for the camera. But you can imagine if somebody's doing that, they're going to end up with some slight muscle imbalances. And if you're only using one side of your neck, the chance of you getting some injuries with your neck and your cervical spine are increased. Okay. So I do encourage people to at least try and get along with breathing to both sides. Okay. If we're only breathing to one side, we also have a reduced appreciation of our surroundings, not so much of an issue in the pool. But when we're in open water, if we are doing if the course is all left-hand turns around a lake, and we can only breathe to our right, that's going to affect our ability to swim straight. We may also be pulling ourselves more to one side if we're only breathing to one side and one arm's a lot stronger than the other as a result. Can create issues with waves and chop. If you have waves coming in from the right and you can only breathe to the right, you're probably going to be drinking a lot of seawater, and I highly recommend against that. But if you can switch to breathing to your left, it's another toolkit in your arsenal. Even in some freshwater lakes, on a windy day, you can still get a little bit of chop that you don't really want to be breathing into. So what is it that is the cause of people only being able to breathe to one side, more often than not, it comes back to that poor rotation. So as we were talking about earlier, if somebody isn't confident being on one side of their body, I mean, everybody has a preferred side that they breathe on. But if somebody really has an Achilles heel that they just don't feel stable, they over rotate onto one side, you need to spend a bit more time doing some kicking on side drills, okay, and that kind of work. So let's talk about real world application, okay? So this is a pragmatic approach to swim breathing. Been talking about a lot of technical concepts, which are really important for sort of coming from a pool aspect. But let's be honest, when we swim open water, sometimes we have to throw the rule book out. Okay, conditions change. We can have a lot of chop, swell, things just happen. We need to be able to adapt to that. So breathing is just more difficult in open water. Look at that photo of me there, swimming around the serpentine. You can see that I am not breathing into the bow wave. I have not got one goggle under the water, okay? I'm lifting my head higher because I simply, part of that's fatigue, okay? I might have been towards the end of the event and losing control of my body rotation. I don't remember it being extremely choppy that day, but there were a lot of swimmers in the lake that I was sharing with, and sometimes these things just happen, okay? So try not to get obsessive about, I need to do this, Simon said this, I've got to do this, okay? Just be a little bit more, be pragmatic and cut yourself some slack. Unilateral breathing is okay sometimes. Look, I'll be honest, if I'm going hammer and tongs over 400 meters, I'm probably not breathing much to my left. Okay, I'll throw in a breath to my left every now and then to see what's going on over there. Make sure that I'm not drifting too far away from the course if it's left-hand turn. See if there's anyone who might be able to draft onto their feet. But broadly speaking, I'm going to want to be, I'm going to be breathing mainly to my right. Okay, if I'm breathing every 2 strokes, I can also get in more oxygen, which allows me to go faster. So again, don't think you have to breathe every 3 strokes or every 5 strokes. The amount, whether you breathe every 2, 3, 4, 5, isn't a huge consequence. Okay, with the caveat that as long as you do most of your training breathing to both sides, that means that when you only breathe to one side, your stroke will be a lot more balanced than if you only ever train breathing to one side in the pool. When we are sighting and breathing, we want to minimize lifting our head up as much as we can. Okay, it can be tempting, especially when we're in open water, to be able to want to have a better idea of where we're going. Try not to compromise this too much. Okay, in the sake of sort of seeing your surroundings. How often somebody sights is a personal preference, and it does depend on their experience in open water. But that is sort of something to go away and to think about. It is a balance. It's a balance. Okay, there aren't really sort of a really sort of strong right or wrong here. Final tip, make sure you pull your wetsuit up all the way. So take slack out of your legs, pull it up, get handfuls of material, bring it all up to your shoulders and to your chest. Not only does this mean you have a lot more flexibility in the arms of your wetsuit, it also means you won't have a wetsuit that sits down here that's really pushing into you, okay? And might be restricting your breathing. Pull it up a little bit, okay? Not to the point where it's going to be strangling you around, you're sort of cutting into your throat there, or your Adam's apple if you're a bloke. But take all the slack out of there, move it up so it's less, you get much less pressure on your upper body. It'll make your breathing more relaxed. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about breaststroke breathing, okay? Now this is something that we all fall back on at some point or another, okay? So I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through this because there may be some people out there who have no intention of swimming freestyle. So if you are swimming breaststroke, you've actually got more time to inhale. Your face spends longer out of the water and less time to exhale. Now, if we are breathing breaststroke, okay, if you imagine this is the water level, we breathe, put our head down, come up to breathe, down and breathe, okay? So we're dipping our head in and out of the water. If you're just doing your heads up breaststroke, okay, That's not going to get you very far. It's not going to get you very fast. If you do have to revert to breaststroke, at least get your head under the water, puts you in a much more streamlined position. Try not to lift your head too high over the water, as if you're looking really high. You don't want the water level to be here. I need to be going along here. You want to try and keep it just so your mouth comes up and then bobs down, and your mouth comes up and bobs down. Focus on keeping it, yeah, so if you're just starting out with putting your face in the water when it comes to swimming breaststroke, then to start with, just focus on on being able to put it in the water and then slowly move that on towards breathing and bringing it in and out. Okay, don't try to rush it. Baby steps, take your time. And when you are doing breaststroke, okay, try to focus on looking slightly down. Okay, you can still have an awareness of what's going on over here, but try not to be swimming along like this, looking dead ahead of you. Puts a lot of pressure on your neck, okay? And it does slow you down. So, key takeaways. What do you need to remember for your next swim? So, we should always be either inhaling or exhaling at all points in the stroke. Use head position and body rotation to reduce the effort required to get oxygen. Aim to breathe into the bow wave if you can create one. And if you're not creating much of a bow wave, focus on keeping your elbow above your wrist and your wrist above your fingertips at all times. We're aiming for bilateral breathing, if at all possible, and try to work on relaxing in the water. Now, this is really a frustrating thing to tell someone who's anxious in the water and not very confident. But it really is important that we feel relaxed in the water, and the way that we become relaxed in the water is we play in the water, okay? Like a 7-year-old. So we have a go at floating, we have a go at putting our face under the water, we have a go at pushing off of the wall in different shapes, okay? We enjoy being in the water, different positions, different things, so that we don't feel as soon as we get into the water that it's a really negative, hostile place to be. I think, oh yeah, we're in the water. I can, this is where I swim, rather than, oh my God, I can't stand swimming. This is the worst. I just want to I just want to get out of here. Okay. So just take your time. It just has to be, just 2 or 3 minutes. Spend a bit more time becoming a bit more acquainted with the water so you feel like you belong there rather than someone who doesn't belong in the water. So that is the end of the swim breathing webinar. Next month, we're going to be looking at understanding cycling gears. Okay, so I'm going to be talking through how to change gear, when to change gear, different gear ratios, different cassettes. These are the kind of things that will have a real impact on your ability to ride a bike, but they can be very intimidating for newcomers. So, squeezing this in at the end, is there a way that I can sort of help you with your triathlon journey? Well, I have a series of bespoke programs that I provide. I can write somebody a training plan based around them in their life. So unless you work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, most training plans won't work for you. And even if you do have that predictable lifestyle, you may have children, you may have lots of other commitments, which means that you can't follow a plan. So I can build a plan around you. Or we can do a more of a bespoke service where I write you a month of coaching, and then we have a meeting, then I write you a month of coaching, we have a meeting, or the fully coached option where we're in full communication every single day. I've also recently launched my phase on performance programs. At the moment, they're for people looking to complete their first triathlon. So somebody who's never done a triathlon before, they might have no experience in any of the sports. Rather than me writing a bespoke plan around you, we do start with a pre-written plan that I then edit to fit around you and your lifestyle. Helps us keep the costs down. We've got a WhatsApp community where you can communicate with other first-time athletes. We have a weekly question answer call on Zoom, monthly one-to-one meeting with me. And it's not just a training plan. We work on your nutrition, strength training, your mindset. Okay, this is a full performance program. Okay, so those are the two products that I just wanted to inform you of there. And yeah, I will be in future looking to create those programs for people looking to beat their times and get personal bests over the distances. But this year, it's all about first timers. So, does anyone have any questions about any of the content we've covered today?
I was just waiting to see if anybody else would ask something.
It's all right. Don't be shy if you've got a question.
Um, so yeah, thank you very much. Really interesting and useful. But I'd ask before, so I'm not planning on doing a triathlon or anything. So I came just about the breathing because obviously it's new to me. Would you consider practicing like a breathing exercise before you get in the water to be beneficial?
So doing a breath practice on dry land. If
Yeah, like maybe, literally on your approach to the edge of the lake, stop and maybe do some controlled breathing or anything like that.
I would encourage you to try it. It's not something I have any experience with. However, it's definitely worth giving it a go. And if you find that is beneficial to you, then I would encourage you to keep doing it. Okay. Now, it can, for some people, they find that doing that deep breath work and that controlled breath work, it can really get the heart rate down. And any element of kind of trepidation or anxiety as they approach the water's edge, if you can start to reduce that, okay, then that is only going to be something that is only going to be a good thing. However, if you do find that you're doing that, and it is actually in a way making you a little bit more anxious with the breath holding and all that comes with it, okay, maybe sort of try it without. I would encourage, I think there's value there. It's something I'd encourage you to try, but it's not something that I'm going to say no, you don't need to bother with that, or everyone needs to do it. It's simply a case of playing around and seeing if it works for you.
Thank you.
It's all right. Anybody else?
I have another one if no one else wants
No?
to.
Yes. No, go for it.
So you mentioned trying to avoid the overuse of your shoulder and bringing the
Mm,
triceps and lats
yeah.
into play. My physiology means I have very shallow sort of shoulder cups, whatever.
Yeah.
So I can quite easily get a rotator cuff injury.
Yes.
So my question really is to avoid that overuse of the shoulder, is it really, if we cut to the chase, is it
Mm.
really about keeping that bend in the elbow?
Yeah, if you keep that bend in the elbow there, then it means that as you're pushing the water back, you're using, again, the triceps and lats. You're always going to use the shoulder. But if your arm comes in, it's very difficult. Hang on, let me try move the computer back. If you're coming back in a straight line without any bend in the elbow, again, I can't really demonstrate it because of the height of the table. But if it's coming back straight, then the only thing that's moving your arm is your shoulder, and that's putting a lot of load through the shoulder. Okay.
Okay.
So by keeping the elbow higher in the water, okay, you take some of the load off the shoulder. Again, it's the kind of thing, it's probably worth trying in the pool. Actually, do you swim in the pool or do you just swim in the lake? No, okay. Yes. So it's the kind of thing that I recommend if you were to sort of try it in Lake 86, just sort of try it for short distances to start with. Maybe sort of around just in that shared area around the
Mm.
entrance bit there, just to kind of see how that works. Most people, when they do that, there's suddenly a bit of a light bulb moment that goes off and they go, "Oh, okay, this actually feels like I'm moving, like I'm really moving now." Okay. Um, and that might be a bit of a penny dropping moment for you. But yeah, like keeping that high elbow. If you head onto sort of YouTube, for instance, and you look at videos of swimmers at, say, the Olympics and other big competitions like that, and you have a look at their form and see what it is that they're doing, that's
It goes so
way.
fast.
Sorry?
They go so fast.
The sprinters will be, yes, you won't be able to see that. But if you look at like the 1500 meters or something, they'll have a lower stroke rate.
Okay.
There'll be less bubbles that are thrown up by their
Mhm.
action. But if you look at the shapes that they're creating in the water with their arms, that is a good way to look at that. Something else that you can do to help. I know if you're quite prone to rotator cuff injuries, is doing some internal and external rotations with resistance bands. Have you seen any of those exercises?
No, but I have the bands, so I
There we
can
go.
let you know.
So the way that they work is you stand if you have the band attached to an anchor point over there, and you bring your arm
Oh yeah.
across your chest, and then you have one on the other side where you bring your elbow out like that, okay? And that is what helps develop the rotator cuff muscles. And a bigger, stronger muscle is going to be less prone to injury than one which is never really sort of trained, a huge amount. Something else that can help prevent rotator cuff issues is, trying to work on that shoulder mobility to allow you to give yourself that range of motion so that as you recover over the water, then you don't have such a limited range of motion in your shoulder.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
I don't have a specific question, but I did just
Mhm.
want to say that it was really helpful. And there was a few things that you spoke about that I'd never really thought of, like
Yep.
with making sure your elbow's kind of above
Yep.
your hand when you go into the water. It was things like that and the rotation of the body.
Yes.
So next time I go swimming, I'm going to be more mindful of that, and hopefully it'll really help.
Yeah, hopefully you'll have a little you have some little light bulb moments that go off. I mean, whenever I ask somebody to introduce something to their stroke for the first time and ask them, well, how did that feel? Their response is nearly always weird. It feels alien because they've done tens of thousands of strokes following the same pattern, and suddenly we're changing that. And they go, yeah, no, I'm not sure about this. But then they look at their watch if they're recording their times or look at the clock. They go, oh, wow, there is a difference there, isn't there? So yeah, absolutely have a look at that. If you have a look, if you type into Google something like freestyle catch, okay, you'll probably find some diagrams that explain that a lot more succinctly than I can. I'm somewhat restricted due to copyright. I can't just pull off any diagram from any website and stick it in my presentation. Yeah, definitely sort of have a little bit of a look at that. It's with the rotation, just make sure you're not sort of over egging it. And sort of play around with it over time and see what works for you because we're all individuals. And if you look at top triathletes or top open water swimmers swimming and you compare their strokes, very often there's not this one uniform, oh, that's the stroke. We will have different arm lengths, we all have different ranges of motion, we will have different things that work for us and some that don't work for us. Some people you think that looks like a really scrappy stroke, but they're the first out the water. So it's there isn't the ideal stroke. It is a little bit of trial and error, and it is about finding what works for you. Okay, well, if there aren't any questions, thank you for coming along. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found value. And if you're watching this and the recording of this and you've got any more questions, drop me an email. My address should be on the emails that you received so far, and I'll do my best to help you. Great, thanks for coming along, everyone, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks very
Simon.
much.
Thanks,
Okay.
it's been really good.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.